All right, so what is this weird notation with this circle and this funky star shape all about? Well, this is your signal to stitch some roses. And this is going to ultimately turn into these really beautiful and cool roses that pop up out of your fabric and create a really nice 3D effect. And they're just really fun to do and they're gorgeous. So that's what we're gonna make. First things first, get your needle and thread, and we're gonna first stitch the funky star. And like, please excuse this, I drew that by hand and it's not like great. So, but it's gonna work. So we're gonna start by stitching from the outside of each line to the inside of each line. So we're gonna start from the back of the fabric as always, find the end of one line, and then pull that thread all the way through. And then we're gonna dump that needle into the middle of the circle. So it's one long straight stitch. And we're gonna do that for all 5 of these lines. Let's get this tangled. Now that we have all our stitches done for the star, we are going to start creating the rose. And that is going to be formed by weaving this thread in and out of these lines. Because these are this is an odd number of lines, the overlap will alternate. So we're going to start in the middle between 2 of these lines here, not in the center, but as you can see right at the top of the center in the middle of 2 lines. Pull that thread all the way through. Now we're going to start here. This needle is not going to go back to the fabric until we are done with this rose. Everything is going to happen on top of the fabric from here on out. So we're going to take this needle, jump over this stitch, and place the needle under the next stitch. Now we're going to jump over that stitch and place the needle under the next stitch. We're going to jump over this stitch and place the needle under the following stitch. And now we're kind of back to the beginning, but because it is an odd number of lines, we're not going to just create the same pattern over and over again. We're going to now kind of switch. So where we went under this one, we're going to go over it now. And we're going to go under the next one. So we're going to go over this, under the following one. We're just alternating the whole way through. So over this line, under the next line. And you're going to do that all the way around. As you go, you want to make sure to don't pull it super tight, but a little bit enough so that these start to squish into the middle. And you'll see the row starts to get bigger and bigger without a lot of effort from you. All of the different stitches start to build upon each other and kind of squish each other in towards the middle of the rows. Now sometimes it's easier because you see me doing some twisting it and moving it, and that kind of helps me as I go around and around and around and around the same circle over and over again, because it can get a little tiring, but the final product is so worth it. So when you start getting to the outskirts of the rows, it might get a little tricky because the stitches are a little bit longer. So you see here, I gotta go all the way around. So you just wanna make sure that your stitch ends up on the outside of the rows and doesn't end up like coming over into the middle of the rows. And this is where it kind of starts to go a little bit slower because I want to make sure that the large parts, the outer edges of the row still looks really good and crisp and not super messy. And then, I think this is over here. This is big enough for me. So when you get to the end of the rows, you'll take your needle and you'll just tuck it underneath the rows and pull it in the back. Find a nearby stitch, which is one of these. This is what I usually do, is I slip my needle under a nearby stitch, pull it through, slide it through again where I just came from, pull that through, create a loop. This is a loop. Create a loop, and then put my thread through and pull, and that gives me a knot. I do that a couple times because I'm paranoid. So I'm going to just do it one more time. It's hard to see. Make a loop. Put it through the loop. Pull. And so then make sure to cut your thread close to the knot. Then I turn it over and I have my rows. And so what I like to do with the rows is I like to take my needle and I like to make them a little bit bigger by going through and picking at some of the threads to make them pop out even more. And it gives it an even bigger 3D effect. So I'm just gently just like fluffing it up, agitating some of these fibers so that they get bigger and bigger and bigger. So you see that this rose has a little bit of a piece of thread popping out. And I like my roses to be a little messy. They're kind of fun that way. But this is a little too messy for me. So I'm going to try to hide it by taking my needle and thread and coming in underneath that. Right there, bring that through, and then I'm gonna just like try to pull it down by hiding it. Let's see that, and then I'm gonna pull it down a little bit so that it's kind of tucked away. You could do that with some of the other messy pieces too, but now it's kind of gone. Ta-da! And that is how you make a rose that looks like this in your design. Happy stitching!